We've learned a lot in this series, and well, I want to leave this on a high note. What I want to do is completely take the training wheels and throw them right in the trash. What we're going to do here is build this. It's going to be a fully functional text editor. Now, as far as text editors go, it's pretty basic, but we're going to show how to integrate back in C++ with the front end, and we're going to talk about some elements we really haven't touched on yet. All right, so let's go ahead and kill our example. This is going to be another one of those where I just don't edit it. You're going to see every little mistake that I make, so I apologize if you hear car doors, dogs barking, things of that nature. So we're going to make a backend C++ class called appropriately backend with QObject. Next, finish. You should already know C++ before you started this class, but I'll try to slow it down just a smidge. We're going to import imports. Basically, we're going to do QCore application, QObject, QFile, QTextStream, and QDebug. So basically, we're going to read a file using a QTextStream. I am going to paste because I just absolutely go bonkers trying to deal with the editor sometimes. These Q properties, remember, because we're interfacing with QML, we need properties. Properties composed of a name, a read function, a write function, and some sort of notify. Don't necessarily need all those, but I've got them all in there. And then with our public, we're going to have path, set path, data, set data. I promise I'm not going to copy and paste this whole thing. I'm just doing some of the simpler stuff just to save some time. And then we've got some signals, path changed, data changed, and all these line up with our properties. And then for private, we're just simply going to have a QString. Ta-da! All right, let's save that. Let's flesh these out. All right, now that we've got all that in there, and path is going to be Q core application, and we want the application dir path. So basically, we're just getting the current directory. And path append, and this is going to be the default file that we're going to edit. If you're running this in root, you're probably going to have a bad time. You shouldn't be running anything in root anyways, assuming you're on a Linux style box. Now for a path, we're going to return and path. Set path is pretty simple. And path equals value. I heard a dog barking in the background. I'm hoping the microphone didn't pick that up, but I live in a smaller neighborhood, and sometimes you'll hear people arguing and things like that. I've got some neighbors that just love to make their life public, and it gets a little frustrating when I'm trying to record. All right, so because we've changed something, we want to actually emit the path changed. And back in data. So what this does is it's actually going to read the file. So let's go in here and let's say qfile, file, and path. Now let's go ahead and say if file.open, and we're going to do a QIO device. If you skip this day, you probably are in way over your head. But basically what we're doing is we're using qfile to open the file. If we cannot open it in read-only mode, then we're going to say qwarning. Could not open file. Actually, I'm going to say could not read file. There we go. And then we're going to return absolutely nothing. However, if we've gotten to this point, we can actually say file.close because we have a file that's open. Let's go ahead and say QTextStream file. So we're just going to take that open file, shove it into a stream, and then read all the contents of that stream back. Makes it super easy. Qt does all the encoding for us. And we want to do a read all. Return value. All right, now that we've got all this, we can probably just grab most of this. Set data is where we're going to actually save the file. So pretty much the same thing in reverse. Going to write only, could not write the file. We're not going to return anything, so we can get rid of those. And here's where life gets a little bit interesting. We can safely get rid of that, and we can say stream, shove that value into the stream, and then let's go ahead and flush it. Now, Qt does do all of this automatically in the background, but I like to do it just in case somebody takes a very, very legacy version of Qt and tries to do this. So we're going to admit that data changed because we changed the property. Now when I say change the property, we're actually talking from a QML perspective. See, data changed. So when we write, we should notify it that that data has changed. Not fully going to use that whole life cycle in this program, but you get the point. All right, so we've got all of this. Let's go ahead and build. Ta-da! No build errors. Love that. All right, good. Now, we need to tell QML that this thing is a thing and that it actually exists. So include backend. And let's go ahead and do a QML register type. Backend. Give it a name. So I'm going to say com.company.backend. There's companies out there that will try to sell you something like this for $1,000, talking about how complex and hard it is. It's really not super hard. All right, so now that we're registered our type, we can actually use this in our application. Let's go ahead and give this another build. Make sure we didn't goof anything up. We're good. Run. QML pops up. Life is good. We have no errors. All right, let's dive into QML land. This is where we're going to drastically depart from where we were. And when I say drastically, I mean things are about to get a little bit harder for us here. So I'm going to import, and I want to do the Qt quick controls, and I want to do the newer version 2.5, and then I'm also going to use a dialog here. So we're going to do import Qt quick dialogs, and feel free to use whichever version you want. And I think at this point we need to actually stop and slow down just a bit here. So we're going to go into our resources, right click, and we're going to open an editor. I'm going to add some icons. And I've already got some icons already in our project. Just going to add them in there officially. Ta-da, ta-da, there we go. Now we want to change window. We're going to change from window to application window. And there is a major, major difference in these things. And we're going to cover those in just a sec. But first things first, we want to add that backend. Ah, we haven't imported it yet. That's the problem. I was like, why didn't that work? All right, import com.company.backend. And we want to do 1.0. Assuming we got that lined up with our QML type that we registered. Backend, there it is. ID, give this an ID of backend. On path change, let's go ahead and do a console.log. Path. And our other one was on data changed. Just want some sort of feedback, even if it's just in the console, so that we know that worked. Now, application window. This is where things are going to get kind of crazy. We're going to introduce some new concepts here. We're going to do some file dialogues. We're going to do some actions and some toolbars and all sorts of great stuff. So first things first, we're going to add some dialogue. So I'm going to say file dialog, and that's coming from this import right here. Without that, it's just going to say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. We're going to call this ID open dialog. Title is going to be please choose a file. Folder is going to be shortcuts.home. Select multiple. Pretty self-explanatory there. We're going to say false because we don't want to be able to open multiple file. Select existing. We're going to say true because we want to make sure the file we're opening actually exists. All right, so on accepted, this is where we're going to do some stuff here. So we're going to say backend.path equals the open dialog dot file URL. Make sure it's URL, not URLs. And then update the editor, which we haven't built yet, so bear with me. I'm going to take this, and now we want a save dialog. I'm just getting all the non-visual stuff out of the way first. And we're going to say, please choose a file, shortcuts home, multiple false, existing false, because we don't want to overwrite the file. We're going to get into more of that stuff in the future, in future videos and tutorials. But right now we're stuck in basic land trying to break into intermediate and advanced. So backend path equals the open dialog file URL, and then we're going to update that editor. Actually, we're going to update the backend from the editor. All right, now that we've got the non-visuals out of the way, this is where we can actually have some fun here. So what we want to do now is we want to make some actions. And actions are a little hard to understand if you've skipped cute widgets. But basically, you can make an action and put it in multiple parts of the application. So let's go ahead and just make one and show you what we're talking about here. Action, IDE does not want to help us out. Call this ID action new. All right, so let's go ahead and say text. And I'm going to say QSTR. And now we're going to say icon color. We're going to say transparent and icon.source because the icon itself is just an image. And then we're going to load up some sort of resource. So we're going to copy. There we go. All right, now what we need to do here is something when it's on triggered. So the action, think of an action like an invisible button, but we can put that button on the screen in multiple locations and suddenly make it visible. So to trigger that, we need some type of editor, right? So let's go ahead and make a scroll view way down here. This is one of those videos where it's not going to be really apparent what's going on until the very end, and then you're like, oh, I get it now. All right, so text area, ID, editor. Focus is going to be true because we want to get keyboard and mouse input by default. The default text, we're just going to say hello world. Select by mouse, we're going to say true so that we can actually select the text in there with the mouse. And then persistent selection, we want to say true for this, otherwise copy and paste won't work. All right, so now that we got that in there, we have an idea of what the actual editor is. Let's save and run, see what this looks like. So here's our editor. What we're going to do now is add menus and a toolbar. And we're going to add the actions in there. But first, so on triggered, we're going to go ahead and say, once we trigger this action, we want to do something with that. So what do we want to do with this? Well, we want to actually go ahead and say editor.clear. Now that we have one action built, we can actually show you what the action does. And I apologize, it's a little bit crazy, but let's go ahead in here and I'm going to say to do add actions. And then I'm going to go ahead and say menu bar. This is part of the application window, and that's what makes application window different than a normal window. And we're going to say menu bar. And I'm going to say menu file menu. Actually, let's call this menu file. And this is going to have some menu items in it. This is the cool part. We're just going to take that action and we're going to say action new. Now we have a very simple, very repeatable design pattern. Let's go ahead and save and run. Let's see what this looks like here. So up there somewhere, there it is. Ta-da! New. Very, very cool. And we got our icon in there and everything. That right there is actually the action. This is the menu, which we haven't finished filling out yet. So I'm going to say title. Save, run. Now it's a little more obvious what it's doing there. Very, very cool. And let's call this menu edit. Notice how we've got action new. So this is what I mean by you can actually reuse actions. New, new. So let's change that to edit. And let's go ahead and in the header, let's get out of there, which is part of the application window, we're going to add a toolbar. So you kind of get a sense of what we're doing here. We're actually emulating a desktop application. And I'm going to give this a row. And in the toolbar, we're going to add the tool buttons. And I'm going to say display is going to be an abstract button. And we want the icon only because we don't want to display the text as well. And then action is going to be the action new. We only have that one action so far. We're going to build a bunch more. But you can see now we have menus and toolbar buttons. Let's save, run, see what that looks like. So there's the button. Here's the menu. I have it duplicated just so you can see that we can reuse it over and over again. And if we click it, ta-da, it just works. That is super, super awesome. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to build a bunch of these actions. So this is going to get kind of crazy. All right, so we've got that. Let's go down here and let's say action open. Open, and if you had a good naming convention, you can just very easily figure out what we're doing here. And here is where things are going to get a little interesting. We'll say open dialog. And we want to go ahead and crack that open. Now in the open dialog, ta-da, remember I said, ta-da, we're going to do something here. So what's going on is we're cracking open that open dialog, letting the user select some sort of file when we're saying backend path equals open dialog file URL. But now we want to take the editor dot text equals the backend data. So what's happening here is we're saying backend set this path. The backend's going to try and load that data, which is actually reading the file in the background. And then for file save, we can say backend.data equals the editor.text. So we have our open. Let's go ahead and do save. Let's go here and say save. And then I want the save dialog. .open. And then we want some just very basic actions here, like copy, cut, paste. So I'm going to go ahead and go bang. Speed this up a bit, maybe. This is what I meant by if you have a repeatable design pattern, it's pretty easy to figure out what you're doing. Whip through this really, really fast. And let's do action paste. It gets way more advanced than this. There's actually some really good examples up in Welcome, and under examples there's a full text editor, but just cracking it open, you're not going to have a clue what you're looking at, unfortunately. So from here, it's just plugging actions in. So we got new, action open, action save, and we're just plugging these into the file menu. And then for edit, we want action copy. Cut, and let's go ahead and do paste. Now we have our toolbar, pretty much the same thing. We're just going to slam a bunch of these in there. So we got new. We can just copy and paste these. We don't need to sit here and type all this out. This is kind of the boring part of design where you just are fleshing out the interface. But really what I'm showing you here is, hey, menus and toolbars are extremely easy to work with here. Save our work, run it. Let's see if this thing actually wants to work. So I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to say, this is my new file. This is multiline. I'm going to grab something off the screen here. Go down here, and we're going to hit paste. Do we not have paste in here? Where's paste? Action paste. Did I screw that up? So I've got new open, save, copy, cut, paste. Did I miss that? So there's new, open, save, copy, cut, and there's no paste. Ah, we've screwed something up in there. Ah, that's probably what it is. The icon's invisible. Ah, I misspelled the icon name. It was a lowercase p, so it was there, it was just invisible. It was probably also at a 0, 0 width and height. Anyways, let's redo this. I'm just going to grab some stuff off the screen. Actually, I'm going to grab this. I'm trying to find something. My file. And I can Control P to paste in there, and there's that C++ header over here. Very, very cool. Let's go ahead and save this, and it opens up the save dialog. And I'm going to put this on the desktop. Let's call this hello.txt. Why not? Can't think of a really good name. Hit save. I'm going to hit new. It blanked it out. I'm going to hit open. Opens up our dialog. Go back to our desktop, and uh-oh, did we goof something up here? Where's our beautiful little file? Let's figure this out. So we have our save dialog, backend path, blah, blah, backend data, editor text. So it might be something in the backend Did we have a problem? Ah, we did. No file name specified. Probably this would be the reason. We have the wrong dialog in there. Save this. Let's rerun this. Let's go over this again. So I'm going to say, hello world. This is my file. I'm going to grab just some includes off the screen, go down here and go paste. We could actually cut them, go down a bit more and paste again. And let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to go to my desktop, say hello.txt. Let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to blank this whole thing out and open it up. Let's go back to our desktop. There's hello.txt we just saved. It's 137 bytes. That editor's blank. I'm going to select that, hit open, and voila, there's our file. So, major takeaways from this. You can actually build desktop applications with QML. The complexity does go up, but I think we've got the foundational knowledge now. Some things are going to be easier than others. For example, when I was testing this, I had to use black and white icons simply because it would not display a color icon. There were tips and tricks and ugly hacks to get it to work, but I wanted something that would work for everybody. So if you try to put a color icon, you may have a bad time. And there are default system icons that exist for Windows, but not for Linux. Oh, that's sad. And then sometimes they work on Mac and sometimes they don't. So I wanted to stay away from the default system icons as well. We've learned a lot in this series, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed making it.